Transitioning to our next session, AI for proposal. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you, Julia. How is everybody today?
How is everybody today?
Hey there.
Doing all right.
Doing well.
Anne, in our community, you need no introduction, but let's just do a brief round, everyone. Roy, let's start with you.
Certainly. Hey, Roy Vella, outside Boston, but my main footprint is New York, San Francisco, London for about a dozen years each. Next Labs is the company, and we are solving the 2023 problem. Everybody got the message. Person with AI is going to outpace the person without AI. A lot of mid-market companies going, I don't like the sound of that. Help me fix that. How do I adopt a thought partner that doesn't have a body? And that's what we do. You want me to nominate next, or Julia, you're gonna walk through the screen?
Yeah, let's just do, I don't know, Bill, Gonzalo, Mark, and just go one by one.
Yeah, Bill Longis, in Atlanta. Been here for 20 years. I work for RevOps, so we're a pretty much revenue enablement. So it's account opportunity and how we can build repeatable kind of models for different sales methodologies. And yeah, that's me.
I'm Mark Stoos. I'm the CEO of Proof Analytics. Proof is a causal AI engine that does causal analysis. It's probably not a great surprise for a lot of different companies, help them understand causes and effects within a very large ecosystem of those factors, not only what they control, but what they don't control. One of the hottest things that we're doing right now is sourcing synthetic data to represent the different steps and outcomes of things that have never happened before, usually in the context of a proposal, and run that data in a causal analytics model to create ultimately a spaghetti type model, which is analogous to what you've all seen with a hurricane tracking system with all the little alternative scenarios. And so that's something that I'm going to be talking about a little bit in the context of this.
Hi, everyone. Gonzalo here, spending time in Europe and in Israel. I'm an investor and founder and general partner at Cardamom Capital. We manage 250 million, and we invest in all of these fancy technologies. Super interested to hear the conversation. AI, cyber, big data, anything deep tech, we're interested. Pleasure being here.
Who's next?
Forgot to nominate, sorry. Anjali.
All right, thanks. So I'm Anjali, nice to see you all, and those of you I'm seeing again. Originally from California, but here in Berlin, I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Resourcify. We're a B2B sustainability and digital waste management tracking platform. So we help with all the ESG reporting, CO2 reporting, et cetera. And we're just starting to put some AI features into our tools. So this will be a very exciting, I think, conversation. Nice to see everyone. And do I nominate the next one? Connie, how about you?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Connie Kwan. I'm here in California. I am the CEO of For Storyteller, and I teach leaders how to become story-led leaders. I use AI to help them build their case for getting projects greenlit and to lead cross-functionally, how to inspire their teams, recruit great candidates, etc. And I was most recently Chief Product Officer at a venture studio where we were also building AI products. So really excited for this conversation. Mark, have you gone yet?
I have, thank you.
Okay, Roy.
I started. So
oh, you started. Okay, Meg.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Excited for the conversation. I'm Meg Hewer, Principal at Hewer Advisors, and I am working with a variety of companies at the intersection of customer insights, AI, and all things account-based, helping people execute more effectively and bring technology to bear on all aspects of go-to-market. And let's see, who do we have left?
Russell.
Russell?
I think I'm last to make it easy on you. This has been a hard test. You got to figure out who's gone if you're paying attention. So, hey, I'm Russell Sherwin. I'm formerly VP of Sales and CMO for Watson Commerce at IBM. I was one of the executives that when we put a product in the market would say, hey, before we put a product in the market, we need to say, number one, what problem does it solve and who's it solve it for? Do we solve it in a differentiated way? And why is someone going to believe the rep that I just hired? In other words, let's separate out reality from the Kool-Aid. Currently, I am A, on a sabbatical, B, working very closely with force management, helping clients drive value-based selling into their go-to-market approaches, and frankly, having the time of my life. Can't wait to get started with this conversation.
And AI for proposal. Let's rock it.
Awesome. Thank you, Julia. And welcome to our very esteemed panel today. Thrilled to have such a wide variety of experiences and backgrounds joining. All right. So when we get into the proposal phase of the market funnel, we want to talk about two big things today. Number one, do we need AI in the proposal phase for the go-to-market funnel? And then two, with that, Russell, to your point, is there enough value in introducing AI into this funnel to support that potential need? Throughout the entire AI Summit, we've been featuring a number of different phases through the funnel and talking about components of AI and how AI can potentially fit. But let's first ground on what's going on in the proposal phase for your organizations.
So what we see, right, which I think is we see for ourselves as well for a lot of our customers, right, is that a proposal is a window into somebody's idea of the future. It's what it can be. The problem is like a framework, like all the things that we're used to using, right? It's generalized and it is unproven in a specific context. And so being able to mobilize large amounts of synthetic but highly representative data from tools like ChatGPT-4 and others, and then run them in a causal model starts to show you very concretely within a probabilistic range what is very likely or more likely to be the case. And so whether you're using it on the vendor side or whether you're evaluating proposals from the customer side, the analytical value of the effectiveness multiplier value of Gen AI and AI in general is really significant.
Yeah, I mean, I would say on that front that the part of what I hear Mark saying and what we feel as well is that the RFP process overall is very generic. So the people who are putting out RFPs don't put a lot of context and detail in about what they're really, again, what Mark's saying, what their vision of the future is that they're trying to manifest. And on the flip side, the people who are filling out RFPs are often trying to just cut and paste as much as possible of generic answers to similar questions. And what a GPT does, any of the models really, I mean, at this point, they're all asymptotically going to the same place. It lets you take in a bunch of other context to, for instance, if you're filling out an RFP, I would put in the website of the client who put out the RFP. I'd put in the book that the CEO wrote. I'd put in the podcast interview. Like, I mean, you have all this other rich content that then could inform the answers to the RFP, right? So the RFP all of a sudden, instead of generic cut and paste, becomes customized in the tone, language, approach, philosophy of the RFP requester. Like, that's just freaking magic. Nobody's doing that today with a standard RFP response.
Yep.
Angela, go ahead.
Okay, I would say, I mean, in my industry, I come from the clean tech, green tech industry. We deal with sustainability, CSRD reporting, and this is kind of a newer arena. We sell to enterprises. And so in a lot of our proposals, we have to do a lot of storytelling, a lot of education. And so it's not just putting together invoices. It's not just finding, an AI tool to make the numbers go quicker, the packages get better. It's really trying to figure out what a story is. So we're actually kind of leaning towards more of your AI tools for storytelling, like StoryDoc, Beautiful.ai, because we really have to educate our end users. We are selling to heads of sustainability in huge, large enterprise companies, and they have to convince their executive team and their boards to align with their ESG agendas. So I would just say, for the purposes of the discussion, like, maybe we can split it out to the types of, proposals that we're trying to create, because I think there might be a different tool or different way depending.
Yeah, I want to come right back to that. Gonzalo, go ahead.
Full disclaimer, I'm gonna throw out a few names of our startups, but I think they're good examples of applications. Some of the speakers talked about prediction of success, enriching the proposal with information about the company. So things that we've seen, yes, you can pull information into the proposal from sources available there, and it would take a ton of time to do it manually. So AI would enable that. We have a company called Spotlight that what it's doing is also enriching with the conversation that you're having with the actual customer, because the RFP will come after likely having a conversation. And if you can qualify these people and get specific insights that are automatically ingested into your data, then you can feed that into the RFP. That's going to be amazing. We have another company that's also going to look at it not from the enriching of the information that the customer is putting out there or that the customer is talking about, but also, are you creating your own knowledge base? Can you actually understand who's asked that question before, and how can you leverage answers that previously have been used in other RFPs? For example, that's a company called Vendig that's doing that. And finally, coming back to storytelling and sort of ESG compliance, there are instances where if there is a big regulatory framework that the vendor has to comply with, having softwares being up to date on the latest and greatest, and showing and raising hands on possible things that you have to take into account when you're submitting the proposal in terms of regulations could be amazing. Again, this is work that humans could do, but that AI does much better. It's another company called Bleed that's doing just that. So super, super exciting things are happening. These are 3 of our startups, but there's hundreds of startups, and some of these are going to be huge. So the answer is RFP and AI is already there. It's happening.
Meg, go ahead.
So on the other side from the RFP style proposal is a more complex proposal that needs to reflect a whole bunch of different input that you would have been getting from a client or a prospect throughout a series of conversations and meetings. And it is your opportunity to make the connection between what that potential customer has said they need and what you do in a meaningful way, but also in a differentiated way that helps you stand out from anybody else who might be bidding for that business. And I think AI does a couple of things in that scenario. One, it does a much better job of remembering what got said in a meeting and distilling that down so you know exactly what you need to reflect back in that proposal, and using the customer's own language, which is really important. You want to be mirroring what they had to say. The other thing that AI does is gets you away from a blank page, but also informs you about what other people may be putting on their pages. So you can use it for competitive intelligence and for insights into how others may have solved a similar challenge. And you can compare that to the way that you're thinking about that particular solution to make sure you're going to stand out. And then the last thing is really just to improve the way that you're communicating, making sure that your proposal is clear, well-written, grammatically correct, and without spelling errors. Those things don't seem like a big deal, but AI is really good at saving us from ourselves. And those are all just some basic things and not the most sophisticated use of AI. But when you bring them together and apply them to a complex proposal situation, you actually end up with a much, much better output.
Totally agreed. All right. So let me ask this question of our panel real quick. I'm hearing a couple of different tenses of verbs and different types of verbs here. Anything from could and would and will to am and are. Who is actively using AI in the proposal phase right now? Whether raise your hand or emoji hands, whatever you like. All right, we got 1, 2,
Yep.
3. Okay, fantastic. So we've got AI already active. Let's talk about where we've talked a little bit about some of the generative components of this, right? Things from helping us do a little bit of grammar checks, bringing in insights from earlier phases of the funnel, from sales, from marketing, potentially from ops, and things coming into this proposal to bring in a bit more personalization to that particular experience, as well as storytelling. How else are you guys leveraging AI today for those that are using AI?
I think that in our particular case, and I see this a lot in my work with CEOs and CFOs in particular, as the cost of cash went way up and became harder to get, et cetera, right? People started caring a lot more about the doability and the viability of proposals. They needed to have a sense of, hey, if we did this, what would it really look like? Like, would it really generate the value that's being discussed? This is not only from a vendor perspective internally, but also from internal teams upwards into the C-suite. It's, in that context, it's the return of the budgetary business case with causal forecasting attached. So I think that there's a lot of different reasons, and this is not even close to the only one, right? There's a lot of reasons why AI is so important in proposals, but one of the biggest ones is that nothing is quite as convincing as analytics, right? Causal analytics.
Roy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's a massive time compression tool, right?
Yeah.
So I can guarantee this: in the knowledge economy, 99% of projects start with a rough draft and go linearly to a final draft with iterations up and down. With AI, I can make 10 versions. I can say, okay, give me a version at a PhD level, give me a version at a 5th grade level, every step between, and say, okay, I like this version, let's iterate on that. The ability, you would never ask that of a human. I would never go, oh, give me 10 versions, give me 10 drafts. But I can look at an RFP and say, okay, now this is the CEO's reading this, what would you say? Okay, the head of sales is reading this, what would you say? This is the customer service department, what would you say? Like the ability to just experiment and iterate and utilize time compression is part of the magic that we enjoy. Like, it's just incredible how much instead of version control from 1.0 to the final, it's much broader, and you can say, take this, take that, and then you can combine these elements to resonate with whoever your audience is. And again, context, like if I put in the appropriate context, I get a different tone of voice, I get a different approach, I get different levels of detail and sophistication. I mean, it's pretty incredible in that regard.
Connie, go ahead.
Yeah. I've been working with a lot of technical founders on storytelling, and the power of AI is so transformational for them because they tend to go really deep into the details, and when they pitch to investors, they're not connecting. So AI allows them to very quickly write something that really summarizes. They can have the 30-second elevator pitch, they can have their 1 minute, 2 minute, like all the different granularity that they need when they make a pitch so quickly from compared to before, that it was very transformational. So we've been using it in that way to really enhance the storytelling. A lot of the proposal writing, if you will, that I'm doing is more advocating for internal resources or sometimes pitching for investment money. So it's not like a formal RFP process, but there is a process of like, hey, here's something. Are you interested? Are you in the right domain? Here's the 30-second, and then leveling that up and kind of doing the reveal. Like when you play a game, you learn a little bit more as you go, and that's kind of how relationships go. So being able to craft all those steps in that relationship building with investors or with internal stakeholders or with the board member or whatever it is has been very transformational.
Gonzalo.
Yeah, so we talked about all of the benefits for vendors. Just to give an example of what we're talking about, these RFPs could transform this AI could transform the time that a vendor takes to submit these types of proposals from months to days. This is the kind of productivity, because a lot of it is data fetching, right? There may be a lot of tweaking and personalization and so on, but a lot of it is gathering all of the resources that you already have, and so that's what we're talking about. And then from the other side, from the buyer's perspective, you could go as far as saying, hey, this RFP requires some tweaking. You're asking things that are confusing. Others in your industry are asking other types of things. The specifications are below standard. So there's a lot of benchmarking that can happen. AI is going to push both sides to a higher efficiency, and higher level of demand and supply in terms of what they're requesting and what they're giving. So it's a very exciting.
Yep. But let me challenge our panel just for a moment on this. The value that I keep hearing is saving time and speeding up the output of a proposal or an RFP, or excuse me, a response to an RFP or RFQ or data questionnaires or whatever is in your proposal phase. Is that the only value? And B, is that valuable at all? If the outcome to revenue still is going to take on the other side as long as it would typically take?
I can start. So for me, I have experience doing proposals in the United States, and then I'm also in Berlin now, in Germany, and it's very different with our clients, the way that you go about the proposal. So in the US, you start with the impact, price, cost, efficiency, et cetera, where you would need AI tools to really craft that, and then you go into the how did you get there. In Germany, leading sales teams, it's very different. They want to talk about your methodology first, and they don't want to get to the impact so at the very end. So to go through the nitty gritty of how do you get there, almost like a research paper, it's just a very different way. So especially if you have teams across different countries and they're dealing with kind of the cultural aspect of sales, on top of the proposals and who you're proposing it to, I think it's important. And you can use AI tools to make that impact, because you could have two completely different types of proposals, which include different facts and different storytelling elements, depending on which country you're pitching to.
Yeah, I'll take Anne, your question. Your question I amount to is AI, is it really providing efficiency, and is that really a benefit? And I'll say it's a dual-edged sword, right? First of all, the proposal stage, I'll just give my perspective there. The proposal stage is about developing trust. Number one, trust around price for value. And number two, trust that you can get to success after you get to yes. Now, price for value comes out of discovery, where I've seen some companies, like I work with a company called ValueCore that does a great job of creating business cases. Where one of the dangers is if you think that an AI-generated value driver is going to tell you what a real human being's value drivers are, you're mistaken. But what AI can help a rep do is identify what the common value drivers might be for a segment or an industry, and develop some smart hypotheses that will drive some smart discovery that could lead to a trust-based proposal. Where this can go off the rails is when you start feeding it through that AI machine, and all of a sudden you have this incredible proposal for a 5th grader, a 10th grader, an MBA student, whoever it happens to be. If you can't then go offline and communicate that same level of trust and insight, and being able to build a bridge from value to price through successful implementation, you're not going to achieve the trust. And back to the question you had, if AI is the boss, you become the tool, and tools don't get deals.
Yep. Okay. So let me follow that up with a question then. In order to maintain trust, right, we're open and honest with how we go about our own processes with whoever's on the other side of that proposal. Are you or anybody else disclosing that AI is involved, whether in writing that proposal, designing that proposal, creating the story of that proposal within the proposal itself on the other side?
So my clients who are using, and I'll let anyone else take the question, but I have a couple clients who are playing with this right now. Our clients who are putting their proposals through the AI machine, or frankly coming up with a lot of boilerplate to form fit an RFP. The good ones, they're working with their champions to make sure that the proposal lands, in the right direction with the intended audience. And so, yeah, absolutely, there should be transparency, but transparency with the champion who you're working with and who's actively selling on your behalf. And you're just having that transparency so your champion understands what's in there. And frankly, how the information got there is less important than is the content aligned with what them and their key stakeholders care about. My perspective, I would love to hear what others have to say on this topic.
I'd love to add on to that. The way I think about it is, I don't think people will care if you use AI or not, because you will definitely use AI. It's like asking if you use word check or grammar check on Word before sending, a proposal. You do, right? So it's going to be this common. And to the extent you might think it's like it's faking it, right? You're telling the AI to do the best proposal they can. As long as it's based on data that is reflective of who you are, that's okay. You're just optimizing reality and presenting it on the proposal. To the extent that you're just lying, then it's just a lie like anything else. But the AI, it won't make a difference. You just will fail if you don't use it. It's as simple as that. It'll be like, again, the grammar check.
The research right now, to answer and your first question, is really rather clear, right? So human behavior, if you take a team of 1,000 people, right, and you map it all out, it's going to give you a classic bell curve. AI, the introduction of AI into that is going to have a disproportionate and relatively minor and one-time only effect on efficiency. Where you're going to get your biggest lift is in the way that AI properly used improves the effectiveness and the creativity of ideas, better thinking, right? Not only with your best performers represented in that bell curve, but in helping your normal performers to get substantially better. And that's really where it is. That's where and there's a lot of research actually that's getting ready to publish on this. The reason why I know about it is that I've been involved to varying degrees, not as a majority person in any of the research, but that's where it's all coming out. There's probably 5 different reports that are all concluding the same.
Yeah. I agree with that. To take an example, I write to apply to speaking, so RFP for speaking gigs. And it's definitely helping me with speed, but it's also helping me with quality. So, the cheap, fast, or good, pick 2 is no longer true. You get all 3. And then the adder, which is on top, that isn't just, okay, these are things that everybody's going to be as fast and then it's going to go away, is the generation of new ideas. So normally I pitch my talks to tech events primarily because that's my background, but I was introduced to a wellness event where my talk was relevant. So I started pitching it to that. But when I put in that event's website essentially as an input, it started giving me other ideas of how to angle the particular talk that I'm giving and the word choices, as I think Meg was mentioning earlier, right, is changing the shape of how I would propose my talk. So it's making a huge difference in that way, and that's definitely a 10x effect.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is, I'll tell you what I tell my teenagers, like, it's not about giving you a finished product. It's about beginning, not ending. It's going to give you 70% maybe, and your job is to bring it to where you want it at the end. In Ethan Mollick's book, Co-Intelligence, the tyranny of the blank page is over. You should never waste any time looking at a blank page anymore. But the nice thing about humans is we're great curators and editors, and we have opinions, and momentum is magic. Once it gets the ball rolling, you're off and running. So this idea of like AI doing the proposal, well, if people let AI do the proposal and submit it, it's gonna suck. Like, let's be clear, like, it's about starting the proposal and shaping, and as Connie said, like making it, blending it and changing it and tuning it to the audience. But it's not about finished products. It's about just getting the ball rolling.
Yeah, Roy, I'd love to compare notes with you on raising kids. What I tell my teenagers is, you're the boss and the tool is the tool. If you let the tool take control, you're a tool, and tools don't really do all that well in life. But yeah, I mean, let's look at where the proposal stage is. I mean, we speak about inbound RFPs, and that's a whole other conversation of what you do with them. But there's an element of, if you did not write the RFP, you're probably not set to win it. So you're not going to have a blank page. You got 3 pages of garbage potentially, or 3 pages that's written by your competition. The question becomes, perhaps can AI look at that, or your own intelligence look at that and figure out how to restructure or reframe the conversation towards something more compelling for the customer, which just so happens to be more compelling for you. But I would say, I think it boils down to, especially at the proposal stage, if you're not the one creating structure and letting the tool help you fill in the blanks, you run the risk of being a tool, which in our world tends to be finishing second, third, or fourth in an RFP, which is never good. The flip side to that is, this can be an easy answer towards answering the mail and just responding to unsolicited RFPs rather than the no. That's a whole other conversation of its own.
Meg, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think you're asking an interesting question, right? Is speed the only benefit? And I think what we're hearing, especially Roy and Russell, I agree with you. It's speed, but it's also quality. And I would argue it's also completeness of information on the part of the person or people putting together the proposal. So for example, am I leaving money on the table for my pricing? Well, let's do some homework and find out faster than we ever could before. So you want to make sure that you are not submitting anything that you get from AI as a finished product, but it's also that you're not submitting any idea that you came up with without doing some homework on it, whether it's pricing, methodology, competitive alternatives, time to completion for different work, whatever it may be, that you're not leaving information out of your knowledge set when you are putting that proposal together in a way that the customer is going to look at your solution and say it's the best one.
Connie.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the arms race is going to land because, for example, there's a tool called Go Zigzag, and it allows founders to create a business plan super quickly, right? And then on the other side, certain VCs firms are requiring a submission of a pitch deck, which rolls through their own AI crunching tool before they even have a human look at it. So basically, both sides are arming up and sending proposals, like many more proposals are going into the pipe. Many more proposals are being crunched by AI. So it's like your machine's talking to my machine until finally the humans get to see it. So, in the old model, you're pitching to a human. In the new model, you're pitching to the machine. I mean, either way, it's a black box, but I'll be curious to see how that manifests. Honestly, because would the machine want to digest the story the same way a human would? Because that's how we're writing proposals now, but maybe not, just like the keyword world, for Google search. So yeah, that remains to be seen.
The machine is more binary, right? In its perspective, right? Because I mean, machine learning is grounded in correlation at the end of the day. It puts things in or out of a pattern. So yeah, I think that the really good part about this, though, is that it's going to move everybody together closer and closer to shared reality in a proposal. And that is only going to help both sides.
I want to expand upon what Meg said pretty quick. First of all, Meg, I thought you had the most important point I've heard today. Specifically, Meg, what you said, quality over speed in an answer to Anne's question. And I couldn't agree more with you. And in terms of quality, and back to trust, quality really boils down to, are we building price for value with a plan to get to success after yes in a proposal? And my point of view there is, if you're about quality, it's about getting the right information, which means even if Salesforce says you're in proposal, you're still working discovery. And once you have discovery, only then can you personalize, which gets you to quality.
Excellent. So let's move on then. The recovering attorney in me always has to weigh in, especially in the proposal phase. We've already brought up the number of people that end up working across this workflow, across all their processes that they have to go through. We've got identified at this point pricing and CPQ and discounting. We've got sales and marketing being involved. We've got procurement. We've got legal. We've got everybody under the sun weighing in on a proposal. What does the compliance and governance process look like for AI when using it in the proposal phase? I'll give an example if that helps a bit for our panel. So for example, government contracts are required to be submitted confidentially, meaning that you are not disclosing or sharing any information outside of your own four walls at the time that proposals get submitted for these particular contracts. In the private sector,
if you're super concerned, right, you can just install locally, right? I mean, you can just put Llama in, or you can also, there's ways, there's an organization we work with called Kindo, Kindo, and they can install and obfuscate the data between the foundation models as well. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to do that. I mean, but the truth is, when you get down to sort of copyright and the rest, like, none of the models have cut and paste as a functionality. It doesn't exist, right? There's no way of it is a weighted token model, and you can prove it to yourself very easily. Open up 3 chats in the same bot and ask exactly the same question 3 times, and you're going to get 3 different answers. It doesn't know cut and paste. So the idea of sort of losing I mean, we had this debate a lot. You can go into a library and read all the books. That's legal, but you can't go in with a copy machine and copy all the books. But we don't have the concept of a machine going in and reading all the books. And that's why we're all tied up in knots about it, because learning is legal. Copying is not. That's why it's called copyright. So, yeah, anyway.
We'll find out what our new precedent looks like. OpenAI, I'm sure, excited to fight that one with the New York Times. Mark, do you want to weigh in here?
Yeah, no, I think that the biggest issue on compliance is no black boxes, right? People need to be able to understand how this was done and what the bias is, because there always is one. And so whether it's intentional or not. So we actually see this a lot with our core product, in that they want to understand the math behind the causal analytics. The nice part is that there's no magic math. The math is the math, and so it's fully disclosed. And so that's an extremely short and very trusting sort of conversation.
Anybody?
What it is. That's really what it is. People just want to know, like, if you're stacking the deck against them or not.
Yeah, but if you're listening, please don't use LLMs for math. Just so we're clear.
Absolutely. That is absolutely correct. You can use it LLMs for data generation, but not for math.
Yeah. I would say.
So we had a question come in from the audience while we're on this topic. Would an agency go out, collect all RFPs in a sector, and just start blitzing responses using the law of numbers? So there is a tool out there primarily focused in the government contract world that is scraping all government RFPs, RFQs, and other related proposal type of documents. And then adding in both the generative and the analytical AI. Very cool, and probably one of the more built out tools from procurement sciences, doing an amazing job with this. Does this inspire any kind of fear? Have you guys seen any other tools that are doing this in other sectors?
I'll just, for us, our RFPs and our proposals are so nuanced to our customers. I like the idea of the quality and trying as a starting point. But I think that we always kind of have to go back through and make it very specific for what they're asking for. And I feel like this would be snuffed out pretty quick, that I'm just reading something that somebody used a tool to put together if they didn't use any of my information or things that the customer's asking for.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this to me is just sort of a sad story to say, is this the race to the bottom in a commoditized market? If you can just go out there and take all the answers and throw them back together into one Uber RFP, well, then there's no differentiation in your industry, and I hope you find a new job soon. I would sincerely hope that you would actually use that as a starting point and say, okay, what else do you have? What's going to be different about your solution over and above what everybody else is already going to say? Let's save ourselves some time and just get right to the differentiation. And if there isn't any, oh, that's a problem.
But
know
but
what
the
you
flip
said.
side of that coin is that you can also do it internally, right? So you can, if your organization is responding to RFPs all the time, and you find that these RFPs are winning and these RFPs are not, you have a fantastic tool now to say, okay, what's the difference between this group of RFPs and this group of RFPs, right? Like that was really, really hard to do beforehand, right? Like now you've got this massive ability to compare and contrast what's winning and what's failing and that kind of thing, which is pretty amazing.
Again, the key becomes AI is the assistant, and the humans are the boss. We're the ones that are connecting value for money to get to trust to successful implementation. If we just start handing over the keys to the overlords, well, to Meg's point, let's all go find new jobs and have some, unified, safety net for all of us.
Connie, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the arms race issue, right? So the receiving side's just being bombarded and it's like spam, like they're going for volume, they're trying to hit one. And if they throw 300 ballots in there and you are throwing one quality one, you're going to get flooded out and not be seen at all. So that's what they're going for. I think two things going to fix that. One is the receiving side will have their own AI bot to try and screen for this, so fraud prevention basically. And then two, I think the verifying and identity validation is going to become much more of a thing. Like, you are human, we have to take these "are you human" tests now. We're going to have more of those. We're going to have all the social media is requiring you to get the blue check mark, whatever. All the RFPs are probably going to start going down that path too. So, scan your fingerprint in order to submit one, and only one application per fingerprint or something like that will probably start preventing these bombardment and spams.
And let's not forget, we're selling here, which means our proposal, whatever's written, whatever ChatGPT or whatever we're using writes, we're going to have to echo and make sure that our champion can actively sell on our behalf, and that people can take the words and turn them into ideas that become a vision for success that we're confident that we're going to be able to implement. So again, I'm just reinforcing what Meg is saying here. Hats off to the way she's framing this.
I have to say, I really agree with Connie, right, about this, right? And we can use marketing automation. Email marketing is a great exemplar of this, right? Where the defensive measures that are being thrown up to essentially filter out the vast majority of that stuff coming in at the server level, mainly because of issues regarding malware. There's a huge amount of malware that's connected with MarTech. That you're going to see a lot more of that. You're going to the defensive measure that's going to be adopted here is going to be the winning solution for some time, and then it will, as it always does throughout history, it's going to flip back to the offense. But the reality is that no one wants, it's in no one's interests long term for there to be too much material, too much fill in the blank where it overwhelms everything else.
Well, I think that this will definitely happen in the same way that you get bombarded by LinkedIn bots that I use, by the way, and HubSpot and Mixmax to do all kinds of sequences to send emails to people. I send 1,000 emails to investors to look at my companies, and 10% of them might say yes. So I think it's inevitable. This will happen for sure, but there is proprietary data to each organization, to each vendor, that is not accessible to all others. So to the extent that you're putting that information into the RFP, it won't be the same. It's not like there's one answer. There may be an optimal answer, but if you're asking questions about you, you're different, right? So I don't think it's the end of the world. And the second thing is, if AI is really working, you don't have to do a proposal, like a request for proposal. You will actually go find them directly without actually having to request. So there's going to be definitely a change and a next iteration of an RFP and a proposal game. Coming back a little bit to what Connie said in terms of machines talking to machines. That's a little bit far-fetched, but all I'm saying is that it will inevitably end up there.
Although it's really not. I mean, the agent thing is already happening. Like that's going to be very active by the end of the year, having agents on both sides interacting.
I agree 100% with that.
100%. In fact, I built myself my own little autonomous response engine that automatically detects when AI is trying to spam me with whatever pitch they want me to hear, and responds back automatically, so I never have to see it. It's fantastic.
I'll test it. I'll send you an email.
No problem.
Send it to me. I want to test it.
Tell that.
So with this, right, considering then, so as we come back around again on the value piece of this, right, we have now broken the iron triangle between speed, cost, and quality with AI, specifically using generative AI. But Mark, in particular, I know you brought up the potential for analytical AI to step in and begin to provide some predictions that could stretch outside of the proposal phase specifically and more into revenue forecasts and predictions. Can you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, and I think actually we need to differentiate real fast between analytical AI and causal AI. Analytical AI is essentially machine learning based, right? It's looking at massive pattern recognition, excluding and not, right? Causal AI is really very much about saying, this is the level of causal inference that exists between all of this and this outcome, net of lag, net of external realities, right? So they all fit together, but they all do different things. I think at the end of the day, if we build a pyramid on all this and we exclude the fourth for a second, which is autonomous, which means people not involved at all, right? If we exclude that, right, the causal AI piece is the ultimate umbrella element. It doesn't mean that it's somehow better than, it's just positionally the final arbiter in terms of understanding what's working and what's not working, what do we need to change in order to get it. It's like a GPS on your phone in that sense for your business. So I would say that they all integrate. It's all really important. You can't just use the one and not the others ultimately. But they all have a purpose, and they all kind of ultimately are validated or invalidated by what the causal piece says. And that's a dynamic element, right? So just because it's busting right now doesn't mean that it's going to bust forever.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this? Go ahead, Connie.
I'm seeing a lot of products come through. Folks ping me to say, hey, check out my product, give me some feedback. So sometimes I come across interesting ones, and there are some interesting ones that are trying to redo how they look at the data. So it's more deterministic outcomes from a SQL search, right? It's because generative AI is not good at the math, not good at the analytical part. So it basically is a different AI. It's still using AI, but basically completely structurally changing how they query so that you can still talk to it and say, I want to see the sales data for this period of time, focusing on this type of cohort, this type of customer. Can you give me an outcome around this? And then it would interpret that into a query that actually pulls from real data and allows us to have deterministic outcome from that. So there's a merging of how generative AI is empowering the data fetching to happen more powerfully and still be very accurate.
Do we see an increase then in proposals being accepted or proposals going to closed won because of AI?
The SIs that we work with who are proposing very, very expensive, very elaborate change management, business transformation kinds of projects are absolutely seeing a significant increase in the acceptance of this, not just because they can be modeled in advance synthetically, but also it's a way that the models don't just stop. The models start accepting natural data generated from the project itself. And so it's a way of keeping it all on track and continuing to prove and otherwise modify whatever's going on so that value is maintained. That's a big deal, right? It de-risks what are otherwise hugely risky projects to a phenomenal degree.
Angeli.
I would say that we can't lose the element of storytelling and relationship building and critical thinking. And I think it goes not just for, AI for proposals, but AI in general. It's a supporting tool. It will help cut down on iteration processes, but we shouldn't lose the element of critical thinking. We're still in the physical and or virtual rooms with our clients. We're gauging their reaction. We're gauging, stakeholder feedback. These are things that AI cannot do for us. So I think it's for us to make sure that we keep critical thinking in the process. If we have a data-driven proposal situation or you're doing to multi-departments, yes, use AI as a tool. Yes, make sure you get all the data. Yes, figure out the methodology. But I just think there's so many AI tools out there. You can help a person make a sale better, but it does not make you a better salesperson. And I think that that's the difference. You have to start with the baseline and make sure that you're continuing to hone your skills and you don't become overly reliant.
So I feel like I have to say, just like winning the RFP is not the objective. Delivering the RFP is the objective, right? So the problem is if we think that everyone, the issuer of the RFP, the responder of the RFP wants increased accuracy. Like if both are accurate, asking the right questions, giving the right answers means that the project will deliver. Like that's what, if you win the RFP, but if you're putting it in, you're a sprinter, but it's a marathon. Well, that doesn't help anybody. Like it's not really gonna, and so I think I don't want to give the impression that we're saying, deliver better RFPs with AI. No, deliver more accurate, higher quality RFPs with AI, such that then the project delivery means the testimonial that comes after is like, oh my God, that was exactly what they said they were going to do, and they did it.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yep. No, I appreciate that distinction, Roy. So I'll put you on the spot then for this question, and then let the rest of the panel weigh in. Let's zoom out for a second from proposal. If we are as 94% of executives are looking to implement AI in their businesses, is proposal the place that we start, or do we look at other parts of the go-to-market funnel to start first?
Yeah, so in our world, it's about what is the final objective? I mean, and that's also the other problem we're not talking about is like there's an underlying assumption that the RFP is good. Like it's a well-structured, well-articulated RFP, which may not be the case, right? In fact, a lot of RFPs, that's not what it says is not exactly what they were trying to achieve, which is also why we have the meeting, right? So that you can extract what the RFP is really trying to get at, even though it wasn't really well done. I think it is the reason we're talking about it in the AI context is because words and images, like at the moment, if you're not using LLMs and you work with words and images all day long, you're missing a trick, right? This is leverage. This is the ability, as I said earlier, sort of time compression, leverage, the ability to do better in less time. I think the RFP is one of the points in the engagement. I can't remember who said it about the relationship. Maybe it was Angeli about relationship over time. Like that's just one of the ways that a company who's got an objective figures out who the right person is to help them deliver that objective, right? And you can't look at it as the end all be all. It's not the beginning of the race. It's not the end of the race. It's dead in the middle of the race.
I'm just going to say I really agree with that, and for a slightly different reason. And that is that nothing gets as close to the dreams and aspirations of a customer as the proposal phase, right? And it is, we can, I mean, I'm not denigrating the rest of it at all, right? But if we look at this from an outside in perspective, that's where it shakes out, right? That's where you're actually connecting or not connecting, like to the point where they're going to write you a check or not, whether they're going to give you a good report at the end, right? All that kind of stuff, right? That this is the chrysalis of awareness, confidence, and trust, right? And so I think, I mean, one of the reasons why I kind of asked, given my pick, you know, to be on this panel, right, is because I believe that.
Meg, go ahead.
Mark, I really like what you just said about this sort of bringing together, you know, the hopes and the aspirations of your client. And when you read a proposal that is really right on, you know it. And that's an exciting moment for both sides. So I agree with you that it's an incredibly opportune space to apply AI. However, I would say for any organization looking at where to go first or where to go next, it's really got to be go back to your sales cycle and see where things are falling out. Where don't you have the volume and the conversion that you need in each of those stages, and to your best ability to understand why, and see if AI is one of the things that you can apply to make it better. But I would always start with, where are you bleeding the most? That's the first place you need to fix. Maybe it is proposal or maybe it isn't. But regardless of the potential for this stage, I think you just really have to go back and do your homework on your entire sales cycle and then decide.
You know, actually, where that links up with those, where your statement and mine just link up, is in the area of ICP, right? Because you're either talking to someone who shares your hopes and dreams or you're not, right? And ICP is an exclusionary act when it's done right, right? You're not trying to be all things to all people, right? It's not that you're not trying, this is not the TAM. This is a very small slice of the TAM, right? That is essentially people like us, people who think generally the way we think, have the priorities that we have, the shared goals and objectives. We may have different thoughts about how to get there and all that kind of stuff, right? But the value systems are the same. And so I actually really liked what you had to say as well for that reason. I mean, those two things, because the leakage is usually about whether or not the ICP is right, right? There's just
well, and by the way, AI can help you, right? Help you define your ICP, help you refine your ICP, and help you know whether or not the people that you're involving in your sales cycle are part of it. So if you're not doing that, yeah, you're going to be all the way back at the beginning with all sorts of problems. So yeah, right on, Mark, I'm with you.
Awesome. All right, Julia, I've got at least a dozen more questions, and I'm sure could go all afternoon and probably into the evening and through happy hour and into tomorrow with this particular topic. But let me pause here and see if there are any other questions from the audience, or if we should go ahead and wrap this up and move on.
Thanks so much. And thanks so much, everyone. We have a lot of questions, but mainly people are curious to know which companies are best positioned to nail AI for proposals. I mean, obviously DocuSign, but maybe any recommendations from each of you?
I can start. I took a demo of a handful of proposal-related tools, specifically that stretch across the workflow and bring in multiple folks from across everybody that touches the proposal. Surprisingly, this area is not very crowded in comparison to some of the other areas. Sales tools in particular, my goodness, exploding map over there of potential AI tools. I do like what Procurement Sciences is doing. They're primarily focused in their ICP of government contracts, but they seem to have an end-to-end solution and moving in the right direction with their roadmap that is deeply compelling in the proposal space. I know Lupio exists out there. There are a handful of other tools with less and less capabilities and less governance in and around them. But what I'm seeing most these days is just leveraging existing LLMs and then essentially home building their own proposal tools within that using those LLMs. For the rest of the panel, what have you guys seen?
I would just say this, and obviously I'm not, everyone knows what product I represent, but I'm going to broaden it out. I'm going to say that if you're not using a tool like ChatGPT-4 to explore, let's call it science fiction outcomes in your business, right? Get the ladder back down to where you are, instrument all of that with data sets, synthetic though they be, right? And run it in a causal engine. If you're not doing that, okay, you are really missing out. That is quite literally the future, right? The ability to say with different probabilities, and everything in life is probabilistic except for like gravity, right? So you got to be able to say, hey, the probabilities of us being able to get to 2 million ARR at the end of the third year, right? And we're pre-rev now. You have to be able to say with some specificity what the ladder is and what specifically are the causal elements back and forth that's going to make that happen or keep that from happening, including all the headwinds and tailwinds that might be relevant. So one of the coolest parts, I think, about this is that it applies to big companies that already have a lot of natural data, and it also applies to startups and even pre-startups, right, that have no data at all just because they haven't been alive long enough to have any data.
And I would just say, just from what we see, it's the companies we work with, they want to get, I'll call it more the top of the funnel correct. They want the research, they want the quality of data before they get into the proposal. So what we're working on with a lot of people is just making sure you understand relationships and strategies. And when I look at my RFP and I look at my inbound data, I can quickly, like you're saying, match them up. But they're all taking at the moment the risk of, well, let me get the front end right first before I go invest in a back end. And so what we talk to customers and what they're asking us for is help us make this whole process easier. But we're not going to start down at the bottom. We're going to start up at the top, if that makes sense.
I'll
Thanks so
throw
much.
two more tools.
Yeah.
I'll just throw two tools out there if we're still open. Number one, check out my friend Noor at a company called Avenir. It's a little bit of adjacency. They're helping you think through what are the right relationships and titles, and how can you leverage your relationships to ensure your proposals are seen by the right players. That's one that kind of goes out of the conversation here, but at the end of the day, it's about who sees the proposal, not necessarily what the proposal says. And number two, a friend Mike, who's working with Value Core, what they're doing is they're driving smart value-based proposals and how to build out the right business case with AI.